Nice.
Hello, everybody.
Hi, everyone. I'm Tiago. I'm the VP of Growth at Move.ai.
And I'm Gordon, CEO of Anything World.
We're going to do a little thing which is different. We're going to call it Back-to-Back. It's not a fireside chat. It's not a panel. As you see, there's no moderators. It's just both of us on stage. And we're also going to be quite open to any of you asking questions as we go along the way. There is a roving mic in case you want to ask a question. But if you just have a burning question as we're saying something, you're also welcome to just shout at us throughout the whole of the conference.
100%. We're used to being shouted at in the streets, in our relationships. So just shout it out if you want to get involved. Otherwise, yeah, as interactive as possible so it's not just two old guys chatting on a stage. Tiago's younger than me.
So shall we do a quick introduction of what our companies
Absolutely,
do
yeah.
as a start? You go first.
So yeah, I'm Gordon, the co-founder and CEO of Anything World. What we do is we use machine learning to bring 3D models to life. Specifically, we have our own pipeline that rigs and animates 3D models at scale. And the end result for game and other 3D content creators is you can request whatever you like and bring it to life straight away. So you don't have to model, rig, animate, or code behaviors for 3D models. We're available in Unity and Unreal. I won't turn this into a 20-minute presentation. It sounds like now, doesn't it? We're available in all the dominant game engines, and you can just request stuff and it comes to life. And the need for our company arose from my personal experience making indie games, used to make PlayStation games, mobile games, and I don't know how to model, rig, animate, in general, create 3D worlds. So we kind of created this product to solve our own problem, which was we want to make games, but we don't know how to model and animate 3D content.
Just a quick hands up. Who here has built games or is building games right now? We got some hands up in the air. All right.
Nice.
We'll get into what we probably find the most difficult part of games. I'd love to get your thoughts on, but the original reason as to why I ended up meeting Gordon was because I thought that Gordon's company, Anything World, really lowered the barriers for creation in 3D, particularly because they were using machine learning, but all in different aspects, of course, for the creation of animated behaviors into 3D previously static DOM objects, but also through the usage of natural language as an interpreter of commands and just voice as well, particularly on the voice interpretation. I know that you have perhaps some thoughts on natural language that you want to talk about. I am very excited about natural language as what I heard is the hottest programming language of 2023, right? And I used to be more of a skeptic than I am today. I see people building apps with ChatGPT, for example. Not to get straight into ChatGPT, but we see people building apps based on just natural language prompts. And I started thinking, how much further until natural languages are able to, or models in this case, and language learning models, are able to interpret a prompt that is descriptive of a game mechanic, right? Because that's ultimately what you can more easily do in an app, right? And even if you draw, but it becomes a little bit trickier, more nuanced to say, when you're describing a whole interaction between characters, between environments, with specific trigger mechanics. I don't know, do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, you forgot to introduce yourself and what you do.
Tiago from Move.ai, and I'll tell you about
Tiago's a living legend. He one of the earliest investors in Anything World. He used to work at Warner Music, and they were one of our lead investors like 4 years ago. Without him, we wouldn't exist, so don't let him play himself down. And now he's at Move.ai, who's doing really super interesting stuff with motion capture, making it accessible for everybody, but both working in ML and AI. And yeah, to get onto obviously ChatGPT is a hot topic. Let's do another hands. Who's using ChatGPT at the moment in their projects? And who's heard of it? I guess that's everybody, right? Only 2 people have heard of it. Sorry, I answered the question for you before you gave you a chance to answer. That's bad. Note to self, don't do that. But yeah, so we were talking about this before. In Anything where we'd allow people to create like these living 3D worlds with their voice and with text for a few years. We've been doing it for about 3 years. And definitely 3 years ago, people were like, what's this? Is this some kind of children's toy? Who's going to use it? Who's going to need it? Not this is rubbish, but this is a novelty, a gimmick, is what people threw at us when we were starting our startup. But now everybody seems to be like, yeah, this is the future. Great worlds with your text, with your voice, and obviously all the big companies, Roblox, Unity, everybody's playing at these lip service to using natural language or allowing people to create and control stuff with text prompts or with voice. And we were chatting about it before, and I think it's important to acknowledge that the fine control is very difficult to get with natural language as far as I'm concerned. It will improve, but Like with our system, and if you go to Anything World, you can download it, try it out, create with your voice. You can say things like, make a desert and add 20 camels. So like specifying the size of that desert or the behavior of the camels through voice or through text is very difficult. So specifying, like having precise interactions or precise control, I think for a while will still remain the domain of code or more intricate interfaces. Whereas voice and text is a really cool way to create and it's very powerful. But depending on the experience you're creating, it might not be suitable. That's what we're...
I guess it also depends on at what stage or for what function you're using the natural language to describe mechanisms, right? So I think we both have heard of this company. They used to be called Jedi, now they're called PK or something like that, who is particularly using the natural language interface and LLMs just for prototyping, not actually for the full product development, but just, hey, we have an idea. Instead of us having to code, which takes X amount of time, maybe we can do this in X divided by 100 or X divided by 10. It might not be exactly what we want it to be, but it's close enough of approximation to be able to test it. And my initial question to them was also just, if you're testing it, you're going to test it with someone, right? Not just with AI. We can talk about that afterwards because I'm very excited about that as well. But you're going to test it with someone, with humans, whether that's alpha testing or dog fooding with your employees or with some sort of consumers, and they're going to probably notice that that's not really very well done because it's been done in a non-code-based way by humans. It's been done by an LLM interpreting what humans saying. But again, they were convinced, and I think there is an argument that for quick, dirty prototyping and for user research that is perhaps maybe more used to that very alpha level type of prototypes, that's enough, right? I'm going to do an inconvenient thing, though. I saw two folks out there who I believe raised their hand in both of our questions, which meant that you are both developing a game and using, yes, I'm looking at you, sorry, and using ChatGPT. Can I ask you if you're using GPT and LLMs for game development or just for other things? I think it's those two folks over there. Is anyone using ChatGPT or any LLMs for game development? Because I'm very curious about, there we go. Because I'm very interested to see what you're doing.
Yeah, my use case probably not what you are interested in, but the one niche I'm experimenting in is closer to education. My wife is actually in schools, and teachers have trouble getting people interested in lesson. And I'm experimenting how to make it cheaper, making those lessons into games, which is very expensive, too expensive for that sector. And I mean, ChatGPT kind of starting to narrow, like, hey, can teacher turn searching roots of an equation into Angry Birds or not?
This is a very good point. Thank you, by the way. This is a very good point because if you're using it to just lower the barriers of access to something that is desired by a sector or a vertical, but previously wasn't accessible because of said barriers, because of the costs, for example, this is going to open up a previous buzzword of back in the 2000 and something, but gamification for a lot more sectors in a lot more different ways than before. So I hadn't thought about that, and that's a good use case, so thank you for that. I really think that lowering the barriers is what this whole conversation and this whole discussion about AI is and will be for quite a long time. Certainly, I know what we're trying to do with Move.ai is lower the barriers so that as many people as possible can digitize motion, human motion primarily at this stage, and turn it into machine-readable information that you can use for character animation, for game development, for prototyping. And let's be real, if a big line in your budget, if you have project managers out there, is still 3D animation, or it takes a long time in the workflow process, and you're able to just reduce it like that, it's not only the indie powerhouses or really the big studios that are going to be able to do it, but the individual game developers from bedrooms are going to be more empowered to finish their game quicker, perhaps with fewer budgets, and you're going to have more of them creating content, which I think is an exciting prospect overall, I'd say. Wouldn't you agree?
I would agree with you, Tiago, 100%, yeah. Seeing as it's the mission of both of our companies, if I said no now, be in trouble. I'm already being controversial enough. But yeah, I definitely think like that is the benefit of AI in the creative industries, is lowering that barrier to creativity. Actually, some people get annoyed. Not general creativity, specific creativity in 3D worlds. But yeah, allowing anybody to create, motion capture themselves, put it in a game, create living like forests or a 3D environments with us, is definitely something that I feel is, or we feel, I think both, is super powerful. Anybody can create stuff that was previously out of reach, whether it's writing a novel or doing your PhD using ChatGPT, or creating imagery, there's people creating whole movies with Midjourney, sci-fi movies they wouldn't be able to. You can create 3D models using imagery and text prompts. You can bring 3D models to life using people like Anything World. So allowing people to create stuff they otherwise would have no chance of creating is for me very empowering, and that's the positive thing about AI. I know it gets a lot of there's a lot of discourse, especially from artists, about AI works being derivative and perhaps people's work being stolen. But,
have you seen that in the gaming industry?
In the gaming industry, not to be honest with the gaming industry, in my experience of it, I used to work at EA for 4 months. They crunched me to death. If there's anybody from EA here, hi. Working on Burnout, if you remember Burnout, those racing games, love those games. The gaming industry, in my experience, is quite slow to adopt stuff, to be honest with you. They have, especially the bigger companies, they have big pipelines, and they have programmers who've been doing stuff for like 40 years, and they're like, we do it this way. So I think actually the gaming industry has been very slow to adopt AI in the sense of machine learning, in the sense of like genuine advances in animation or conversational engines and stuff like that.
Right, because I was going to say that the word and term AI, if in any industry, has been prevalent for decades in the gaming industry. I remember playing Championship Manager 98 and having AI prompts or AI toggles for the different players and different coaches. So it's been around. It's just perhaps a different interpretation of what it actually is.
Yeah, artificial intelligence in gaming has been around since forever, since Pac-Man. How do they run away from you? There's some intelligence, some spatial knowledge, intelligence based on dynamic gameplay situations. So in that sense, artificial intelligence has been around since the birth of gaming, really. But in its modern incarnation, the use of machine learning and large language models, neural networks, all the kind of stuff that I remember the words for but don't properly understand because I've got a smarter team. That kind of stuff, I think the game industry is a little bit slow to pick it up. Now we're seeing a lot of NPCs powered by GPT and their derivatives and whole startups, and that's super powerful. Is that you can generate these dynamic situations. One of the things we always wanted to do was make a world with Anything World, because we can bring stuff to life on the fly, so create living 3D worlds as people speak or as situations get created, is to create I hope nobody steals this idea, but I'm going to say it now anyway, is to create a whole living world whereby the narrative, the plot, the dialogue is generated with machine learning, and then it's visualized on the fly with machine learning as well. These open game worlds with limitless possibilities are within our reach, and it's been a little while to get to where we are, where it's just about to starting to open up, in my opinion.
Because
sorry, there's a question. Sorry, Tiago.
Go for it.
Yes,
sorry, yes. That's
we're just having an argument.
That we want. We want to argue on stage. About safety.
What are your thoughts on safety, on AI safety in gaming?
Safety?
Yeah, just for a bit of argument.
So someone was asking me this morning what's my opinion on the general ethics of AI, right? And whether the AI itself can be used for nefarious purposes. And I would say absolutely it can, but I guess the legal onus, or certainly the moral onus, the ethical onuses, will be on those who programmed the original inputs of the AI and who are feeding it with data sets, right? So either the creators or those who are, by interacting, feeding it with the specific reasons or prompts that will lead them to create those different, perhaps negative aspects of it.
Take responsibility for the output of the program if it creates on the go and you don't predict it. How you gonna address the safety from even this perspective?
I think that is a very complex question, because you can't put that safety ethical onus on anyone but those who are creating it and who are interacting with it, as opposed to the language model itself or the chatbot itself or the neural network itself, right? Because exactly what you mentioned, it's all generative and we can't predict it, there are going to need to be safeguards, absolutely, right? And that will probably restrict the ability of what it can generate then. But there will always be people who will, using those safeguards, circumvent them, try and find ways to get the nefarious purposes that they want, so that there will always be that debate. I think it's the same. Why is there, I guess there are different shades of this, but there isn't the same level of debate of safety around, say, for example, the information on the internet. There is obviously fake news, and there are obviously some steps on policy on how to stop that. But I think people will just realize that that's just the way the generative models work, that new safeguards will always keep being built, and new people will try and find ways to get around those safety guards. But it is an interesting and very complex debate because exactly what you mentioned. There's no predictability on it. Do you have a counterpoint, or do you have a counterpoint?
No. Just to say, I guess you have to embrace the randomness a little bit if you're working truly with machine learning. Thousands of examples spring to mind, but I think also for artists and maybe copyright holders, going back to our Warner Music experience, if an artist wants to embrace this kind of stuff, they have to let go a little bit. If they let their music be used to train other people's music, it will be derivative, but in ways maybe they don't know, or their lyrics. Or I think there has to be an opening up from people involved to say, this is me, this is what I want, but the results are going to be somewhat unexpected. That's why it's exciting. So embracing that randomness is something I think anybody involved needs to do, and the more forward-thinking people will do it, and they will come out in front, in my opinion. But I guess it depends. If you're making a kids app, then obviously you want to keep the synthetic content generation to a minimum, especially if my 13-year-old son's involved in creation. So it depends who your audience is as to how controlled it needs to be. But yeah, I mean, if you're allowing, I guess if we're moving on to like synthetic 3D creation, which I've just moved this on by asking you a question, but yeah, there's lots of things. There's nerfs and there's all kinds of systems, stable diffusion, where you can generate 3D models from prompts and from imagery. So to your point, what if I put an offensive image up and I generate a 3D model of whatever it may be? We can all use our imaginations here. That's something that either you try and block or you embrace. So there's definitely a letting go involved in using machine learning, genuinely using it to create stuff and allow people to create stuff that is maybe not very compatible with tight censorship. It's definitely not compatible with tight creative control. So maybe that's another aspect.
I think it's a great question, by the way, and it's one that pops up a lot of times. I really think it is going to be quite generational in the sense that, not that there's different generations that are going to look at it from different perspectives, but the mood will be different as time passes. I think the mood is quite hyper right now about safety because there have been a few incidents, because there have been a few off-the-rails situations that the media like to clickbait based on. And by the way, there's genuine concern around it. But safeguards, moderation is a very well-established and very needed practice across the internet and technology for quite a long time. So I don't see it as anything but just the need for that type of implementation to the new technology, right? That's all I think. That's what's going to happen, in my opinion. Personally, I am very excited about, similarly, synthetic 3D creation, synthetic text creation as you interact with what will be this open world model, right? I don't think that, I maybe disagree with you that it is at the reach of our hands and tips of our fingers, but I think it's perhaps going to take a little bit longer to develop and to actually go out commercially, just because first, it takes a whole bunch of marketing money and development money to launch an open world game. You know, the budgets of things like Jedi Last Survivor or whatever,
right.
Like the Harry Potter.
I guess it's also a risk. It's also a risk on the part of the publisher, the person putting up the money. Here, chuck 10 million at this, it might be a bit shit. Or it might be amazing. No one's going to, but yeah, as you say, if it's an established franchise, there's definitely risk averse in movies, in music, in gaming as well, bringing back these old franchises. So, but I think like the people that embrace it and just we're going for this, they could win really big because a lot of the established players are risk averse, as you're saying.
I think so. I think the risk is probably going to come from smaller independent houses or publishers that are willing to say, you know what, we've seen this tool. It's now at a level that we can now push it to our studios, advise them to go build with it, or just really like bedroom creators who are going to say, I have this crazy idea. It's going to be about farming, but you never really know what's going to come out of the earth. Sometimes it can be cabbage. Sometimes it can be, I don't know, fish. Sometimes it can be an alien. Sometimes it can be just myself coming out of the farm.
That sounds like an Anything World game for sure.
You can create it with your technology, right? But there's a bit of a risk from the budget side to be able to make this a reality at this stage, I think. Because let's be honest, a lot of these tools are still quite clunky, especially text and what's meant to be human interface. We've all seen the news about how it's passing the human verifiability test, but really, like, you kind of know when you see a ChatGPT output text.
I'm not sure that's true.
I mean, there are already very clear pointers. And the one like pet peeve that I have is whenever ChatGPT says, however, there is something else that I need to tell you. Like, it's just very, not very obvious, but if you scroll through a lot, you start seeing some patterns. And by the way, those patterns will stop disappearing. But just to reinforce the point that things are still at a point where they're still a little bit clunky. Like, 3D creation is, I find it quite fascinating with NeRFs, as you were mentioning before. Are you guys familiar with NeRFs at all? Is that a question, or is that saying yes? Yes. He was just saying yes. So for those who don't know, I find it really fascinating. Gordon is way more advanced than me, so he'll be able to debunk me. But NeRFs are about creating synthetic media, so specifically images, but those images are of the same specific object or character you want, and you simply prompt or dial or customize the model, the diffusion model or whatever, to be able to create different angles of the same object, because then with the same different angles of the same object, you'll be able to reconstruct a 3D generative object, which I find a great, interesting use of the different steps of AI to build something that was previously not possible, right? I found when I discovered NeRFs, it was just, wow, mind-blowing for me.
Yeah, NeRFs are cool, and there's also like stable diffusion stuff as well. So from a single image now, there's a few examples. There's papers coming out. I don't know if you'll follow like the AI machine learning scene, or there's like some Telegram groups I'm part of. Every day, 10 new papers come out, segment imagery. The Facebook did a new thing the other day. You can generate 3D models now from a single image or a single prompt, which is crazy in terms of what you can do with such little input. I don't know if anybody here has tried any like synthetic 3D creation or creating 3D models from imagery. What was your experience? Oh, the mic's coming your way, I think.
Second row.
Giving you some exercise today. That guy here in a white t-shirt.
Yeah, I used a couple of models already in the market, like, for example, on Hugging Face. So like new experiments models that you could actually feed it with a model or with a photo or something, and then it trains on it, and accordingly you can prompt it later and get the output according to your requirements. So I played around with it a little bit, and it was fun, yeah.
Yeah, and was it the quality that I don't know what kind of things you're making with it? Or?
Yeah, I made text to video. I tried to make some mouth eat some cheese. It was able to produce it. However, when I did some kind of horse running, it was not able to produce it. Right. So it was like the early stage still, but it was kind of like generally, it got my idea. It showed me something that I'm able to use, and yeah, so that's my experience with it. I mean, like in the text to image, text to video, animations, this is what I tried.
So when you say text to video, just to confirm, that's the 2D video, right?
Right.
Right. Yeah. So that is already quite, I'd say, advanced, but still quite clunky, as you mentioned. I'm very excited about when you were able to start creating text to 3D, like the NeRF, and then text to animation, and you start being able to do the whole value chain of production, what was previously essentially all code-based or all art drawing or all manual keyframe, and you start chopping it up and helping those 3D animators, helping those 3D artists, and helping those programmers and mechanics designers, level designers, etc., to just be able to build what they were previously building with much more efficiency. This is what I'm really excited about, because if you start doing that, you have no idea the kind of crazy stuff in terms of creations that's going to happen. And that's what I'm excited about. A world, a market where we're going to have so many different games that are empowered beyond the traditional formats of what publishers are. You'll see more strays. You'll see more different games that really excel in creativity because someone escaped all of the publishing or VC questions about, do you think that there's an addressable market? Who knows? We can just do it for X amount of the cost that it was previously done, and we'll find if there's an addressable market or not.
I always made up those slides anyway, Tiago, so I'll tell you now you've left Warner Music. Then just one mark, yeah, totally agree. Yeah, like usually is a good use case, and yeah, empowering people to create like crazy stuff beyond the bounds of our current imagination is definitely what excites me too. One of the things I like about anything world, sorry to bang on about my own company all the time, that's why I'm here a little bit. But yeah, is that you can create whatever you want. You don't have to like have a fixed world. You can request stuff on the fly. Your users can request stuff. You can create these worlds that are dynamic, and you can build stuff beyond the scope you previously would have, and that's the kind of stuff is exciting, and the GPT stuff as well. And I would say on the quality stuff, that's interesting what you say. I think that's the current status is you can create these videos, you can create 3D models if you want, but the quality is not that high yet. It's not really like now everyone in the room can go and use the prompts and make, I don't know, 1,000 cars and make a racing game, because the quality won't be high enough to be usable, but it will be. It's only a matter of time before it gets there. Anything where we bring all those objects to life, add animations to them in an automated way. But maybe, I don't know what you think, Tiago, like I've been thinking like the company or the organizations that do well here will be the ones that like expand their speciality and bring in other services. Like there's a company called Magma who do like an online collaborative Photoshop, and they're bringing in stable diffusion to generate imagery, and they're allowing people to generate 3D from there when it gets to life, gets to that stage, and maybe they'll work with us to bring animated stuff in. But somebody who provides the service of, I put text in, and I generate an image, I generate a movie, I generate a living 3D scene, I generate some basic game logic, like the whole chain. If a company can capture that whole chain and make it easy for everybody to create this kind of stuff, that's really powerful, isn't it?
Yeah. I want to make sure that, by the way, we're almost at the end of our time. I want to make sure if there's any questions that you guys want to ask. Otherwise, we'll keep talking, of course. Any questions? Go for it. Thank you. Which application?
Jedi or something.
Oh, I think they were called Jedi, and now they're called PK. So they're essentially a natural language processing based creation of game mechanics. So you describe the game mechanic that you'd want. Say, for example, this Minotaur, every time you hit it with this type of sword, the horns will grow 3 times bigger and they will become 3 times more aggressive, right? I'm paraphrasing what that natural language will be. That's how I probably would try to put it. But it also begs the question of, I would frame it in this way. You'd probably want the same output, but you would frame it in a different way. How capable is the language model to be able to understand the differences and the nuances of how we both speak, how we both interpret, and how we both describe things to be able to get to the same desirable outcome? But that's the general intent. It's meant to have a certain amount of variables that are not pre-programmed, but predefined, that you're then able to say, make it more aggressive. And it understands what aggressive is because there is a variable. Maybe it's not called aggressiveness, maybe it's called hostility, but it kind of identifies the same and tries to create it.
There's another company called Opus that do it. That's why I was looking at my phone. I wasn't being rude. Well, I was being rude, but I was finding something. There's another company called Opus that does that claims to do text-to-video game mechanic generation. Also, if you download Anything World, you can do text-to-world creation, like make an underwater world and add 100 sharks, and positional stuff as well. Not so much game logic, but it's interesting. And I think, the use that I see immediately, and Ubisoft are using this for similar stuff, is prototyping. I've got an idea, I want to visualize it super quickly, and then iterate on it. Sorry, question over there.
Well, there's another question. I'll say that you should definitely also download Move.ai.
I wanted to know what would be the implications of, for example, anything world where everything can be created. So if agents, for example, ChatGPT or 4 and others, decide to create a system, for example, a democracy, and they understand, hey, we don't really want to end our lives. And what is the implication of a game designer at that point?
So, did I understand the question correctly? You're saying that if a model, an algorithm, tries to create a different type of democracy, is that what you said?
For example, inside the game, where
yes.
the characters themselves are an AI agents, and then just start to create groups and think about democracy.
I mean, I think that's amazing. If they can solve the problems with democracy, then why not, right? That's like actually a good question that I should pose to ChatGPT. Can you tell me what the best model of democracy would be? So I think that's actually quite exciting, right? You don't really know what the agents in the games, in the environments are going to be. Like there's a company that I met the other day, I don't know what's her name, but they were creating simulators for games using AI personas, right? And the AI personas not only were able to move, which is why we were talking about it, to make sure that they moved in as much of a real as possible way based on actual real humans and kinematic data, but also with ways to think and interact with the objects around them. I think, was it Facebook that did that test? I think it was Meta that did that test where they created a town with specific, So I find that really exciting, right? Because you then start thinking in ways that you probably naturally wouldn't think. You're being pushed out of your comfort zone just because you saw an example that you wouldn't have seen in the real world. Oh, you chose to go into that house. For context, for those that are not familiar, Meta did this test which they created a village with houses, with people, and the houses had schedules, had preferences, had activities, and then they just pressed play, right? And they wanted to see what things were, what these people were doing, what these beings were doing. And some of them made decisions that were perhaps surprising, because not in the sense that they overthrown the capitalist society that was dictating what they were saying, but they chose to, knowing that someone was busy at that time, chose to go to someone else's house. Or, knowing that it was still busy, chose to go to their house and try to knock on the door and interact. Like, so I'm excited about what they're going to talk when you start putting politics into those games and rules for how society is meant to behave. I think we're running out of time, but let's go. One more question. Sorry, organizers. Here's the mic.
It was Stanford and Google experiment, not Meta's.
Yes, thank you.
And they did had political discussions that had elections.
They had elections. Oh, there you go. Perfect.
Nice.
I had missed that. That's amazing. Do you know who they elected and why? That's probably asking too much. I think that's it. That's right about the time that we have.
Brilliant. I think that's
Thank
it,
you for participating. And
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you for joining
Thank you
us.
so much. And if anybody would like a T-shirt, come and see me afterwards. If you follow us on Discord, I've got some merch. Thanks, Tiago.